Hello there, Jack from Junior Game Creators here. Today we're going to be making a game called Crawly. Now, this is a very simple kind of game, one that we can get up and running very quickly, and it will give us a lot of opportunity and a lot of scope to customize the game and really make it unique to the player. It's all about changing the sprites and changing the backgrounds and adding sound effects to make a very interesting and unique style of game. And we're also going to be working with enemy behaviors here, what we call AI or artificial intelligence. So the player character is going to be surviving for as long as possible while different monsters come after him. Think about something like the mobs in Minecraft. They all behave quite differently, and so are our enemies in this game. So we're going to start like we always do by deleting poor old Scratch Cat. Bye, Mr. Scratch Cat. One day I'm going to make a game that includes Scratch Cat so we don't have to delete them at the start, but not today. And we're going to start by making a blank sprite that we're going to use as our game engine. So just rename that to game engine. This is where the flow of the game is going to be controlled. And we're going to add in some characters to our game as well. So let's open up a new sprite from our library and pick a guy. Let's choose people from our little menu over here. And I always really like Dan because he looks quite terrified already. So let's open up Dan. He's already called Dan, that's quite handy for us. Let's have a look at our costumes. We only need one of these. Not quite sure what that pose is, but we'll keep the scaredy cat one. That'll be perfect. And we're going to use two bugs as well that Dan's going to be running away from. So let's go into our animals and we'll take Beetle. Check his costumes. He's only got the one. And we will take, let's take another one. I think the best bet would be Ladybug one. Just take the one off the end there because we've only got the one Ladybug anyway. Check the Ladybug's costumes and we got Ladybug already. Brilliant. So these are our characters in the game. Dan has been shrunk down to tiny bug size and he's got to avoid these vicious, colourful looking bugs who are out to get him. Let's add in a nice background as well, something suitably spooky. Outdoors, I think, where the bugs live. This one in the woods is going to suit quite well. Excellent. So we got the basic look of our game is set up already, and once we get the mechanics in place and the coding done, we can change all of this and give it a completely different theme. Maybe it's space, maybe it's underwater, maybe it's medieval fantasy, maybe it's your school and you're running away from the teachers. It's entirely up to you, but once we've got the game in place, you can change it however you want. So let's get coding. We're going to start with our game engine, as we always do. And this is going to be the only place that we find our when green flag clicked sprite button. It's going to start at the top here, and we're going to use everything else is going to be controlled with broadcasting our messages. So green flag clicked, we want to start a new game. So just rename that message new game. So when the green flag's clicked, we know we're starting a new game. Now what happens when a sprite receives that new game, we want it to initialize or make its way back to the start. So let's create a variable here because we want to see how long Dan can survive. So we're going to need a timer. We could use Scratch's built-in timer from the sensing tab over here, but I like to use a variable because it gives us a lot more control. So let's make a variable and we'll call it time. We're going to set time to 0 to start with because we want our timer to count up and keep track of how long you survive. And we want to be able to see how much time we've lasted. So let's show that variable time. And you can see it's popped up over here. And at the moment, it's set to 0. Then we're going to start our game. So we're going to broadcast a new message. And we're going to call it start. Oops. Game. Whoops. Clumsy fingers this morning. And from there, we want to also add a sound effect in. We want some musical loops. So let's add in a forever block. Have a look at our sounds. We're going to use the play sound until done because we want the sound to loop over and over, but only when it's finished. And let's add in another sound from our library. Music loops is always great when you're adding background music. And we're in the forest, so why don't we go with jungle? Works quite well, I think. So let's take that jungle sound effect and add it into our game. change this to jungle. So when we start the game, we get the jungle music playing. Now we want to set what happens when we start our game. So we're going to take a when I receive start game. Remember, we're triggering that up here. We want our timer to count up. So we're going to take a forever block because we want it to keep going up and up and up for as long as the player survives. Wait 1 second and then change time by 1. So every second is going to change the time by 1, back to the start, wait another second, change time by 1. And let's just check our timer goes up. There it goes, counting up and up and up, and that should carry on forever. Smashing. Now let's set up Dan's movement. We want Dan to be able to move around the screen and avoid these bugs. So we're going to use the arrow keys to control Dan. I think that's a great way to limit the control that a player has. If you could move him with your mouse, the game might be a little bit too easy. So we're going to be moving up, down, left and right with the up, down, left and right arrow keys. So let's start off by initializing Dan, or telling him where to go at the start. So when I receive new game, we want to be able to see Dan. We want him to go to the center of the screen. So let's set these to 0 and 0. And I think Dan's a little bit too big at the moment. He might have trouble avoiding these bugs. So let's shrink him down even more than he already has been. In our looks tab, we're going to set size to, let's test out 50%. The best thing to do when you're setting any of these numbers is to try a number, see if it works, and then go back and change it if not. I think that's about right. You should be able to navigate around these bugs there, although the bugs are quite a lot bigger than him, which probably just adds to the spook factor. Now, let's set up Dan's movement. So when the game starts, when I receive start game, we're going to need a forever block because we always want to be able to control Dan. We don't want to have any time in this game where we can't move him. That would be really scary. And we need 4 if blocks, 1 for up, 1 for down, 1 for left, and 1 for right. So let's plot these into our forever block here, up, down, left, and right. And we're going to need 4 key pressed blocks, 1 for up, 1 for down, 1 for left, and 1 for right. So let's just change these to those buttons. So we've got up arrow, down arrow, left arrow, and finally right arrow. And then we need to move Dan or change his coordinates according to whether we want him to go up, down, left or right. So we're going to need 2 change Y bys for our up and down because the Y coordinate is up and down. Whoops. And we're going to need 2 X coordinates for his left and for his right. So if he's going up, we're going to change Y by 10. So we'll increase his Y coordinate by 10. If he's going down, we need to decrease his Y coordinate. So we're going to add a minus at the front of this. If he's going left, we need to decrease his X coordinate. So we're going to add a minus at the front of this. And if he's going right, we need to increase his X coordinate so that he moves to the right. So let's test this out and see if Dan moves. Well, hey, off he goes. He's a pretty nippy little mover here as well. So he's sliding around all across the screen. Not always looking where he's going, but he's running away from bugs he doesn't really have time to. So everything working there as it should. And we also want to make sure that if he's touching any of the other bugs, that the game is over. Essentially, if the bug get to him, Dan's time is up, unfortunately. So let's set another block that tells us what happens when the game starts, because we want these 2 things to happen at the same time. Well, you need to always be able to move, but you always need to be able to be caught as well. So let's add a forever block, an if block, and we're going to use an or block here. Now this means if we've got 2 different things that can happen, if either of them happen, then trigger what's going to go on down here. So if he's touching either the ladybug or the beetle, either one of them, then we're going to stop everything. So let's plop our stop all in and grab our sensing blocks for touching. So if he's touching, whoops, this can be a bit fiddly when you're using lots of operators like this. So if he's touching the beetle, or if he's touching the ladybug, it should be game over. Let's have a look. So I can move fine here, but if I touch that bug, game over. Great. Now this would be a super boring game if these beetles and ladybugs just stayed exactly where they are and Dan just walked around. You'd never have to do anything. You'd always have the high score. It would be rubbish. So let's set up some AI or enemy behavior or artificial intelligence. Basically some instructions for our beetle and ladybug that tell them how they should chase Dan. Now, we've got to be quite careful here because it would be very easy for us as the game designers to make the beetle and the ladybug really powerful, and then the game would just be too difficult or even impossible. We need to give them a chance to catch Dan, but not guarantee that they're always going to. So let's start with a simple follow. We're going to click on our beetle here. When the game starts, we want to use when I receive start game. We want him to go to top corner. So let's say X all the way over to one side and Y all the way up here. So let's go with X as minus, not too far, let's say minus 200 for X and Y at 140. So minus 200 for X and Y is 140. There he goes. He's up there on top of the timer. Let's shrink him down a little bit, otherwise things could get very difficult. So let's set his size to, I don't know, 70%. Nice, a little bit smaller. We don't want him to go straight for Dan. We want to give the player a chance. So we'll wait a second before we do anything. And then forever, point towards Dan. And move just one step. So it's going to be a slow crawl. Now, the move block always follows the direction that the sprite is pointing in. So if you're going to use the move block, you need to set the point direction. So you can point in a specific direction or you can point towards a specific sprite. So let's test this out. It should follow down really slowly. There we go. So if I move over here, he's going to follow me into this corner. Over here, he's going to follow me up here. And I'm moving 10 steps at a time and he's only moving 1. So I'm a lot faster than him. But that constant threat, if you're not careful, he could really catch up to you. And if I touch him, game over. So our beetle's working perfectly. Now let's get a little bit more complicated with our ladybug, or ladybird as we call them over here in Britain. Remember, Scratch was developed in America, so they have some funny words for things. Now this is going to be a little bit more complicated. We're going to use when I receive start. So when the game starts, we want them to go to the opposite corner. So let's just do the opposites of what we used with our beetle. We have minus 200 and 140. So let's do 200 and minus 140. So they should be in opposite corners. Let's set them about the same size as the beetle. If you remember here, we had 70% size. So let's set him to 70% size. Just so things aren't too difficult. Wait a second, because we don't want him to go flying off straight away. Now what we want to do, we want him to look at Dan, wait a second, go to where Dan is, wait a second, look for Dan again, and then go to where he is now. So if Dan's not moving, he's going to get caught by the ladybug. But if you keep on the move, you've got a chance to get away. That way it's going to encourage our player to keep moving around the screen and keep finding new places to dodge. So we'll use a forever block, because we want this to happen throughout the whole game. We're going to use our point towards Dan again, so that he looks at Dan. And then we're going to use the glide block. Now this is great for things like bullets or trains or any object that you want to move in a straight line along a kind of track. So we want him to see Dan and just go for him. So we're going to glide for 1 second, 2. We want Dan's X position and Dan's Y position. And we can find these in the sensing tab. X position of Dan. And we're going to change both of these to Y position of Dan. Then we want him to look at Dan again if he missed him. Because remember, Dan should be moving the whole time. Wait a little bit of time. And let's use a random number generator here, so we're not always waiting the same amount of time. Let's set that to 1 to 3, and we can change these numbers later if they're not quite right. Back to the start, do it all over again. Okay, so let's test out our game now. I can move. Here comes the bug. See, he's darting to wherever I was. And now he's waiting a little bit longer. Oh no, I'm going to get trapped in this corner. Lucky escape. Dan can move quite far off the edge of the screen, so he's got a bit of an advantage there. I actually think that's probably not quite fair. So let's make sure Dan can't sneak all the way off to the side. Otherwise the game's going to be a bit too easy. So let's go back to our Dan block, our motions tab, and we've got this super handy block here called if on edge bounce. And I'm going to put this in the movement block in our forever and just above our movement here. And that should mean that if he gets too close to an edge, he's just going to stop. Let's have a look. There we go. Now I can't get all the way off. And Dan's changing his direction as well, which looks quite cool. Making things a little bit harder for me. And just adding to the challenge and tension of the game. Oh, caught. He got my foot. So, we've got a working game here. Alright, everything that we wanted to put into the game is here. It's quite straightforward. It's quite simple to play. And it's very, very customizable. So let's just have a quick look through and see what we can change relatively quickly. Let's go in and change our backdrop and pick something completely different. Let's go with the moon. Alright, we're going to space now. Let's change Dan to some kind of alien. I think something in space would work really well here. Let's have a robot. We're going to delete Dan's old skin, his old costume here. Let's change this to something else space related. Let's have this mean looking alien here, Pico. And let's change this ladybug to something else. Have we got a mean nano? We got a mean nano. So these aliens aren't very happy with the robot. The robot's chilling on the moon, but the aliens are coming to get him. So let's test this out now. Oh, one more thing. We want to make sure our music is updated. Keep our sound block in there. Let's just change it from the sound library. Have we got anything space sounding in our musical loops? There's got to be something. Should we test them out? Dance space. Nice. Very spacey. Let's update this block here and test it out. So there we go. In a matter of seconds, we've changed the style of the game from a guy trying to escape monsters in a forest to a robot trying to escape aliens on the moon. In seconds. And there's loads more we can do to change this as well. There's lots of things we can do to add smoothness or polish to the game. We could add power-ups. We could add items. We could make it 2-player. It's really up to you. So I hope you have a lot of fun fiddling around with this game once you've finished it. Change it into something that you think's cool. Maybe you're super into history and want to do a medieval game where you're running away from dragons. Or maybe you're really into vegetables and you want to be a cabbage that's trying to avoid a knife and fork that want to eat it. I don't know, it's up to you. Remix the game on our account and we'll be able to see all the crazy creations you come up with. Thanks very much for watching and happy creating.